So let's go over to the actual like repairing of the
Yeah.
aircrafts and like you as a traveling sheet metal mechanic. So even like
Yep.
this is gonna be a dumb question. What is sheet metal? Like, this literally the actual metal that goes on the plane that it gets like
Yes.
bent around? It's like the nose of the plane, so it's like the wings is sheet metal.
Correct.
Okay,
So the two typical types we work with are aluminum and steel. Some of them can be heat treated to different tempers and that sort of thing. But basically, it's a quarter inch or an eighth of an inch or a half inch thick piece of metal, and we can essentially cut, bend as we need. Some of them do need to be hand formed, so it's not like you can just bend up every single shape with uh, typical tools. Some things actually have to be ordered and sent in specifically, by either Lockheed Martin or McDonnell Douglas, whatever aircraft we're working at the time. We have to send in our specs and say, hey, we need this specific part sent. And then I fabricate everything else around it, depending on what the repair is. Sometimes pilots can what's called over geojet or over under geojet. And inside the wing, there's actually ribs that look almost like a doorstop, and they'll just shatter, mid-flight. And once they get back down to the ground and we realize what happens, usually avionics does their diagnostics, and then we'll dive into what the actual repairs need to be. But yeah, essentially from start to finish, we get a problem. Let's just say it's a hole in a wing. We go to our technical order, our TOs. We look up the blueprint on it, essentially graph out, what type of metal that it needs, how thick it needs to be, draw out, lay out a pattern, cut it out, form it, how it needs to be, and then shoot rivets into it, like I was explaining earlier. Yeah, it's metal on metal.
what's like the most common thing that needs to be repaired? Like what's like I guess the most common part of the plane that gets damaged? I don't know how to answer this
Great question.
Yeah.
So we have these things called anchor nuts. I worked with some New Zealanders and also some people that were from South Africa, and they called them anchor nuts. But basically, it goes on the backside of a panel. So even when you have your panel on top of it, you can just set the screw in and drill it in. So essentially, it's two little rivets that hold on a nut that's just floating on the backside, so that when you put your fasteners in over a panel, it just goes right in. So those typically break often, whether a crew chief is screwing it in too hard or someone, hit it with a tool, they tend to break often. So getting called out to the flight line to replace an anchor nut, fairly common.
You ever thought about getting a pilot's license? Want to fly?
Absolutely. I think probably for me, it's like 10 years, 15 years away. I have a few other things I want to do first, but I know enough about the system that I don't think it would be more than probably 18 months for me, and I'd have it.